What would you do if you walked into the lavish penthouse of a ruthless crime boss to serve drinks, only to find a faded photograph of your 7-year-old self resting on his desk? For one waitress, this chilling discovery unlocked a deadly, earth shattering secret about her own forgotten past. The air inside the penthouse at 900 North Michigan Avenue was thick with the scent of wealth, a cloying mixture of expensive cedarwood, aged scotch, and the unmistakable metallic tang of dangerous men. Kendra stood in the corner of the sprawling dining room, her posture perfectly straight, holding a silver tray of crystal champagne flutes. As a black woman in her mid-20s, struggling to pay her tuition at Loyola University, she was used to being invisible in rooms like this. To the billionaires, corrupt politicians, and underworld figures mingling under the modern glass chandeliers, the catering staff from elite hospitality were nothing more than moving furniture. That was exactly how Kendra preferred it. Invisibility meant safety, especially tonight. The man hosting the gathering was Logan Hayes. To the society pages of the Chicago Tribune, he was a reclusive venture capitalist who occasionally donated millions to the Art Institute. But to the hushed, terrified whispers of the city's underbelly, Logan was the undisputed head of the local Korean syndicate. Adopted from a brutal orphanage in Seoul by an American family, he had kept his Western name but returned to the shadows of his heritage, ruthlessly dismantling the old guard of the Kangpai and taking total control of the city's underground ports. He was a ghost, a myth of violence and precision, and tonight, Kendra was standing in his home. She kept her dark eyes cast downward, adjusting the crisp collar of her white server's uniform. Her thick, natural curls were pulled back into a severe, elegant bun, but a few stray coils brushed against her warm brown skin. She focused on the polished marble floors, trying to ignore the heavy, intimidating presence of the armed men standing by the terrace doors. Kendra, a sharp voice hissed. She blinked, turning to see Harrison, the catering manager. His face was pale, glistening with a nervous sweat that had been present since they passed the security checkpoint downstairs. "Yes, sir," she replied quietly. "We are out of the 2008 Dom Perignon at the main bar," Harrison whispered hurriedly, glancing over his shoulder. "Mr. Hayes specifically requested it for the toast. His private reserve is in the master study, down the west hall. Go fetch 3 bottles." Immediately, Kendra's stomach tightened. "The master study? Are we allowed to go back there? Do you want to be the one to tell Logan Hayes we can't fulfill his request?" Harrison snapped, his voice trembling slightly. "Just go. Be quick, be quiet, and touch absolutely nothing else." Nodding, Kendra set her tray down on a nearby side table and slipped away from the bustling party. The West Hall was a stark contrast to the lively dining room. It was dimly lit by sleek, geometric sconces, the walls lined with towering dark wood bookshelves and abstract paintings. The music from the party faded into a muffled, distant hum, replaced by the sound of her own heartbeat drumming in her ears. She reached the heavy oak door of the master study. It was slightly ajar. Taking a deep breath, Kendra pushed it open and stepped inside. The room was breathtakingly opulent, yet coldly masculine. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a dizzying panoramic view of the Chicago skyline and the dark expanse of Lake Michigan. In the center of the room sat a massive desk, carved from solid black walnut. Behind it, a temperature-controlled glass wine cellar glowed with a faint amber light. "Just get the bottles and get out," she told herself. She walked past the desk, her soft-soled shoes silent on the Persian rug. She opened the glass cellar, quickly locating the dark green glass and distinctive gold foil of the requested vintage. She pulled 3 bottles from the rack, cradling them carefully in her arms. As she turned to leave, her hip lightly bumped the edge of the large black walnut desk. She paused, holding her breath, terrified she had knocked something over. Her gaze dropped to the polished surface. There were neatly stacked ledgers, a sleek laptop, and an ornate crystal whiskey decanter. But sitting right next to a heavy, gold-plated pen was a small silver picture frame. It was the only personal item in the entire room. Kendra frowned, stepping closer. The item inside the expensive silver frame wasn't a professional portrait or a piece of fine art. It was a Polaroid, faded, creased at the corners, and slightly yellowed with age, as if it had been carried in someone's pocket for years before being encased in glass. Curiosity, getting the better of her. She leaned in to look at the image. The air vanished from her lungs. The 3 bottles of Dom Perignon suddenly felt like lead weights in her arms. Staring back at her was a picture of a little girl. She was about 7 years old, wearing a bright yellow sundress that was stained at the hem. Her dark skin glowed in the summer sun, and her hair was braided with colorful plastic beads. She was smiling broadly, revealing a missing front tooth, and holding up a melting ice cream cone. Beside the little girl stood a boy, perhaps 10 years old. He was of Asian descent, his face bruised, his expression a fierce, protective scowl. He held the little girl's free hand in a tight, unyielding grip. Kendra's hands began to shake violently. The clinking of the glass bottles was the only sound in the suffocating silence of the study. It was her. She recognized the yellow dress her mother had bought it for her at a thrift store in Southside Chicago. She recognized the small, crescent-shaped scar on her left knee from falling off a bicycle. She recognized her own smile. Why? The question screamed in her mind, echoing against the walls of her skull. Why does the most dangerous mob boss in Chicago have a picture of me from almost 20 years ago sitting on his desk? Her mind raced, desperately sifting through fragmented memories of her childhood. She remembered her parents, who had died in what she was always told was a tragic hit-and-run accident when she was 8. She remembered the string of foster homes, but she did not remember the bruised, angry boy holding her hand. A cold sweat broke out across her neck. This wasn't a coincidence. This wasn't a mistake. Logan Hayes knew who she was. You always did have a habit of wandering where you don't belong. The voice was low, smooth, and laced with a quiet, terrifying authority. Kendra gasped, spinning around so fast she nearly dropped the champagne. Standing in the doorway, blocking her only exit, was Logan Hayes. He was taller than she realized, dressed in a sharply tailored, midnight blue suit that emphasized the broad, rigid line of his shoulders. His dark hair was styled immaculately, but it was his eyes that froze Kendra in place. They were pitch black, unreadable, and fixed entirely on her. He stepped into the room, the heavy oak door clicking shut behind him, with a sound of utter finality. Kendra's heart hammered against her ribs like a trapped bird. She took a step back, her back hitting the glass of the wine cellar. I'm sorry, she stammered, her voice barely a whisper. Mr. Hayes, Harrison told me to get the champagne. I didn't mean to pry. I was just leaving. Logan didn't look at the bottles in her arms. His gaze shifted from her terrified face to the silver frame on his desk, and then back to her. He walked slowly across the Persian rug, moving with the silent, predatory grace of a man who owned every shadow in the city. You haven't changed, Logan said quietly, his voice devoid of the anger she expected. Instead, there was a strange, heavy reverence in his tone. The eyes are the exact same. Even terrified, you refuse to look down. Kendra swallowed hard, her mouth dry as dust. Please, I'll pretend I didn't see anything. I'll just go. Put the bottles down, Kendra, he commanded softly. The sound of her own name on his lips sent a shockwave of ice down her spine. He knew her name. He hadn't asked. He knew. Trembling, she set the 3 expensive bottles onto the edge of the desk, her hands shaking so badly they rattled against the wood. She stepped back again, crossing her arms over her chest defensively. Who are you? She breathed, the fear in her voice finally giving way to a desperate edge of anger. Why do you have a picture of me? I don't know you. Logan paused, resting his hands on the back of his leather desk chair. He stared at her, a muscle feathering in his jaw. For a fleeting second, the terrifying mob boss vanished, replaced by the ghost of the bruised, scowling boy in the photograph. You don't remember, he stated. It wasn't a question. It was a fact, tinged with a quiet bitterness. The trauma of that night wiped it clean. The doctors said it was a mercy. I always hoped they were right. What night? Kendra demanded, taking a step forward despite the warning bells screaming in her head. What are you talking about? My parents died in a car accident. I went into the system. That's my story. Where do you fit into it? Logan let out a slow, heavy breath. He picked up the silver frame, his thumb gently tracing the glass over the image of the 2 children. Your parents didn't die in a car accident, Kendra, Logan said, his voice dropping to a gravelly register. And your father wasn't just a mechanic. Kendra stared at him, the world tilting slightly on its axis. You're lying. His name was David. He was the chief accountant for the previous head of the syndicate, Logan continued, his eyes never leaving hers. A brilliant man, a good man. He found discrepancies. Millions being funneled to a rival cartel. He was going to the feds to blow the whistle. Kendra felt the blood drain from her face. No, no. They were normal. We were normal. You were normal, Logan corrected gently. Because they shielded you from it, just like they shielded me. He looked down at the photo again. I was an orphan. The syndicate used the orphanage as a recruitment ground. They threw me in a fighting ring when I was 9. Your father saw me. He couldn't save all of them, but he bought my contract. He brought me to your house. For 6 months, I slept on a mattress in your basement. You gave me half your sandwiches. You held my hand when I had nightmares. Kendra's breath hitched. A fragmented image flashed in her mind, a dark basement, a boy crying in his sleep, the smell of antiseptic as her mother cleaned a cut on a stranger's cheek. The night they died, Logan said, his voice tightening, the syndicate sent cleaners. They rigged the car. I was supposed to be in it with them, but your father hid me in the floorboards of the garage before they left. He told me to stay quiet. He told me to protect you. Tears blurred Kendra's vision. You, she whispered. You're the boy in the basement. I made a promise to David that night, Logan said, finally setting the frame down. He stepped around the desk, closing the distance between them until he was standing mere inches away. Up close, Kendra could see the faint, silvery scars lining his jaw, the remnants of a violent past he had never escaped. I couldn't protect them, Logan said, his eyes burning with an intense, terrifying heat. But I swore I would protect you. I went back to the syndicate. I climbed the ranks. I tore down the men who gave the order, one by one, until there was no one left but me. I took the throne to ensure they could never touch you. Kendra was paralyzed. The man standing before her was a monster to the world, a criminal who commanded armies of violent men. Yet, he was looking at her as if she were the only tether keeping him from falling off the edge of the earth. You've been watching me, she realized, her voice trembling. All these years. The anonymous scholarship to Loyola, the landlord who suddenly dropped my rent last year. That was you. Every shadow you've ever walked past. I was there, Logan admitted, without a shred of hesitation or remorse. Every man who looked at you twice in the wrong neighborhood was dealt with. You were never alone, Kendra. Not for a single second. A chaotic mix of horror, gratitude, and betrayal warred in her chest. Her entire life, her struggles, her triumphs, her assumed independence, had been carefully curated and guarded by a phantom kingpin. Why tell me now? She asked, a tear finally spilling over her lashes and cutting a warm path down her cheek. Why leave the photo out? You knew I was working this party. Logan reached out. His hand hovered in the air for a moment before his knuckles gently brushed away the tear on her cheek. His touch was shockingly warm, a stark contrast to the coldness of the room. Because the past is catching up, Logan whispered, his jaw setting into a hard, dangerous line. The cartel your father uncovered. They've realized who I am. And worse, they've realized who you are. The party tonight isn't just a gathering, Kendra. It's a trap. And you are the bait. The weight of those words hung in the suffocating silence of the study, heavier than the oppressive humidity of a Chicago summer. Kendra stared at Logan Hayes, the billionaire ghost, the ruthless syndicate head, and the broken boy from her basement. Her mind struggled to bridge the terrifying gap between the man he had become and the child who had once held her hand. Before she could process the sheer magnitude of his confession, the muffled, elegant hum of the party outside shifted. It wasn't a sudden explosion or a cinematic scream that signaled the arrival of violence. It was a terrifying, abrupt silence. The jazz quartet stopped playing mid-note. The clinking of glasses ceased. Logan's head snapped toward the heavy oak door, his posture instantly transforming. The vulnerability vanished, replaced by the lethal, coiled tension of a predator. He reached under the tailored jacket of his midnight blue suit, his hand emerging with a matte black, suppressed tactical pistol. Get behind the desk, Logan ordered, his voice a low, commanding whip crack. Now, Kendra. What's happening? She gasped, her legs feeling like lead. The Navarro cartel, Logan muttered, his dark eyes fixed on the door. They bought out my head of security. I knew there was a leak, but I didn't know how deep the rot went until I saw the guest list for tonight. Move. He grabbed her arm, his grip firm but surprisingly gentle, and shoved her behind the massive black walnut desk. Kendra crumpled to the Persian rug, pulling her knees to her chest, her white server's uniform stark against the dark wood. A split second later, the heavy oak door of the study splintered inward. The sharp, metallic thwip-thwip of suppressed gunfire tore through the air. The floor-to-ceiling windows behind the desk shattered into a million glittering diamonds, the glass cascading over Kendra like deadly rain. The cold wind from Lake Michigan instantly howled into the room, whipping her dark curls around her face. Logan didn't flinch. He moved with a terrifying, calculated grace, stepping into the line of fire rather than away from it. He raised his weapon, firing 3 rapid, precise shots. 2 men in tactical gear, entirely out of place among the tuxedo-clad guests, dropped heavily in the doorway. "Stay low," Logan commanded, stepping over the shattered glass. He moved to the fallen men, swiftly disarming them, and tossing a spare magazine into his pocket. "We are leaving. We have exactly 90 seconds before the backup breach team overrides the penthouse elevators." "My coworkers," Kendra choked out, panic constricting her throat. "Harrison. The other servers." "They aren't targets," Logan said coldly, extending a hand to pull her up. "The Navarros operate on strict contracts. They are here for me, and they are here for you to draw me out. The staff will be ignored if they stay down. You will not." He pulled her to her feet, shielding her body with his own as they moved out of the study and into the West Hall. The penthouse was unrecognizable. The abstract paintings were riddled with bullet holes, and the sleek geometric sconces sparked with exposed wires. The smell of expensive cedar wood was entirely overpowered by the sharp, acrid stench of cordite and copper. They reached the service corridor, a hidden labyrinth used only by the catering and cleaning staff. Logan punched a code into a biometric keypad, shoving Kendra through the heavy steel door just as a fresh barrage of gunfire tore through the plaster behind them. The service elevator was waiting. Logan hit the button for the sub-basement garage, his eyes scanning the digital floor indicator as they plummeted downward. Kendra pressed her back against the cold metal wall of the elevator, her chest heaving. The sheer adrenaline coursing through her veins was the only thing keeping her from collapsing. She looked at Logan. There was a streak of blood on his pristine white collar, though he didn't seem to notice. "Why me?" she demanded, her voice vibrating with a mixture of terror and anger. "If you protected me all these years, why am I suddenly a target? I'm a waitress, Logan. I don't know anything about syndicates or cartels." Logan didn't look at her immediately. He kept his eyes on the floor, numbers dropping rapidly. 30, 25, 20. "Because your father didn't just find discrepancies, Kendra," Logan finally said, his voice echoing in the small metal box. "He stole the proof." The Navarros were using Chicago's underground ports to funnel weapons, paying off the old Keikangpai bosses to look the other way. David found the master ledger, a physical, encrypted drive detailing a decade of treason and billion-dollar transactions. "He never told me about a ledger," Kendra said, shaking her head frantically. "I was 8 years old." "The cartel didn't care," Logan replied, his jaw tight. "When the cleaners killed your parents, they searched the house. They tore the walls down. They found nothing. For 20 years, that ledger has been a ghost. But a week ago, a Swiss bank flagged an automatic renewal for a safety deposit box under your mother's maiden name. The fee was paid by a trust fund your father set up. The Navarros intercepted the digital flag. They realized you were still alive, and they assumed you had the key." Kendra's breath hitched. A cold wave of realization washed over her. She reached under the collar of her white server's uniform, her trembling fingers grazing the delicate, silver chain she had worn every single day since she was placed in the foster system. Hanging from the chain was a strange, heavy silver pendant. It looked like an abstract piece of modern jewelry, jagged and asymmetrical. Her mother had clipped it around her neck the night before the accident, kissing her forehead and whispering, "Never take this off, baby girl. It's your guardian angel." Logan's eyes dropped to the silver object in her hand. He froze. "It's not a pendant," Kendra whispered, a tear slipping down her cheek as the puzzle pieces violently clicked together. "It's a key." "A high-security biometric vault key," Logan confirmed, his voice dropping to a reverent murmur. "He hid it in plain sight. around the neck of the person he loved most in the world. The elevator jolted to a violent halt. The digital display flashed SB2, sub-basement level 2. They've cut the main power, Logan said, raising his weapon as the heavy doors slowly slid open. Stay right behind me. Do not let go of my jacket. The sub-basement garage was cavernous and pitch black, save for the sickly yellow glow of the emergency exit signs. The air was thick with exhaust and the echoing drip of a leaking pipe. Logan moved with terrifying precision, pulling Kendra through the shadows toward a massive, matte black Mercedes G-Wagon parked in the VIP section. He didn't use a key fob to unlock it. He simply pressed his thumb against a hidden scanner under the door handle. Get in the passenger seat and keep your head beneath the dashboard, he instructed, shoving her inside and slamming the heavy armored door. He jumped into the driver's seat, the engine roaring to life with a deep guttural growl. Just as the headlights flared, two black SUVs tore around the corner of the ramp, their high beams blinding them. Armed men began spilling out of the vehicles before they even stopped moving. Logan didn't hesitate. He slammed the G-Wagon into drive and pinned the accelerator to the floor. The heavy armored vehicle surged forward like a battering ram, smashing directly into the side of the lead SUV with a deafening crunch of metal and shattering glass. Sparks showered the concrete floor as Logan brutally pushed the crippled vehicle out of the way, tearing up the exit ramp and bursting out into the slick, rain-soaked streets of Chicago. We need to lose them, Logan grunted, gripping the steering wheel as automatic gunfire pinged uselessly against the bulletproof rear window. He wrenched the steering wheel hard, plunging the vehicle down the ramp into Lower Wacker Drive. The subterranean, multi-level roadway was a labyrinth of concrete pillars, flickering fluorescent lights, and blind corners, the perfect place for a ghost to disappear. Kendra kept her head down, her heart pounding furiously against her ribs. She clutched the silver key around her neck, the metal warm against her palm. Her life had been a lie. Her parents' deaths, her struggles, her survival, it had all been dictated by a shadow war she hadn't known existed. Logan weaved through the concrete pillars at breakneck speeds, his face illuminated by the harsh passing lights. He was bleeding from a cut on his temple, but his expression was eerily calm. He drove the way he did everything else, with absolute, uncompromising control. After 10 minutes of breathless, high-speed evasion through the subterranean maze, the headlights of their pursuers vanished. Logan took a sudden, sharp turn up an unmarked exit ramp, bursting out onto the empty, quiet streets of the Gold Coast. The silence inside the cabin was deafening. Kendra slowly sat up, her hands trembling as she wiped the stray glass from her lap. She looked at Logan. He was gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles were white, his chest rising and falling heavily. Are we safe? She asked, her voice cracking. For tonight, Logan said quietly, pulling the G-Wagon into the secure, gated driveway of an unassuming brownstone. This is a shadow house. Only I know it exists. Not even my lieutenants know about it. He killed the engine. The sudden quiet was heavy, thick with unresolved tension and unspoken truths. Logan turned to her, unbuckling his seatbelt. He reached out, his fingers gently, almost hesitantly, touching the silver key resting against her collarbone. Your father saved my life, Logan said, his voice dropping to a low, raw whisper. He pulled me out of a cage. He gave me the only 6 months of peace I've ever known. When he put me in those floorboards, he told me to watch over you. I failed him that night. I couldn't stop the bomb. You were a child, Kendra said softly, surprisingly finding the courage to meet his dark, intense gaze. You couldn't have stopped it. I spent 20 years building an empire of blood just to make sure no one could ever touch you. Logan continued, his eyes searching hers with a desperate intensity. I watched you graduate. I watched you struggle. I wanted so badly to step in, to pull you out of your double shifts and give you the world. But I knew if I got too close, my shadow would fall on you. I had to stay away to keep you safe. He pulled his hand back, resting it against the steering wheel. And now I've brought them right to your doorstep. Kendra looked at the man who commanded armies, the man who had just killed to protect her, the man who had silently orchestrated her safety from the dark. She didn't feel fear anymore. Looking at the faint scars on his jaw, she only saw the bruised boy from her basement, the boy she had shared her sandwiches with. You didn't bring them to me, Kendra said, her voice steadying. She unclasped the silver chain from her neck, holding the key out in the dim light of the cabin. This did. My father left this to me, Logan. He knew what he was doing. He knew the ledger was the only way to destroy them completely. Logan looked at the key, then up at her. If we retrieve that ledger, the Navarros will throw everything they have at us. There will be no going back to your normal life. You will be walking into my world. Permanently, my normal life was an illusion, Kendra replied, a newfound strength settling in her bones. She reached out, placing her hand over his. His skin was rough, scarred from years of violence, but his pulse beat steadily beneath her fingers. You've been fighting this war for me for 20 years. It's time I fought it with you. Logan stared at her, a profound, quiet awe passing over his hardened features. For the first time since she had walked into that study, the ruthless crime boss melted away completely. He turned his hand over, intertwining his fingers with hers, his grip tight and unyielding, just like it had been in the photograph. Then tomorrow, we burn the cartel to the ground, Logan promised, his voice a dark, velvet vow in the quiet of the night. Together. If this pulse-pounding story of hidden pasts, dangerous romance, and mafia secrets kept you on the edge of your seat, smash that like button. Share this video with your fellow drama lovers, and don't forget to subscribe and ring the notification bell so you never miss another thrilling story. Comment below. Would you trust Logan after uncovering the truth? Let's debate in the comments.